Hey folks, Jeremy from Engage, and we need to talk. This week, the current administration began taking steps towards dismantling the Department of Education, firing 1,300 of its staff, and this is a number in addition to the 600 that have already been essentially forced to resign from their positions. And at the time of filming this video, the Department of Education reportedly had 4,000 people on its staff in total. We're talking about slashing its staff in half. And if you've ever have paid attention to any teacher talking about how difficult it is in a school environment when you slash a staff in half and how that affects class sizes, you'll know exactly where this rocky road is headed. Oh, hold up. What exactly does the Department of Education even do anyway? I know. There's some all-powerful government agency that dictates everything that's taught in public schools, right? Wrong. The U.S. Department of Education has never had unilateral authority to impose any sort of universal curriculum upon every public school in the country. Never. What the U.S. Department of Education actually does is administer federal funding to schools all across the country. And according to a 2018 report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, that federal funding could amount to 6 to 13% of a district's entire operating budget. That might not sound like a lot of money because those are small percentage numbers, but they make a colossal difference, especially when it comes to Title I and special education. Title I was part of legislation enacted by Congress in 1965, intended to provide critically important funding to districts that serve students in low-income communities. 18 billion a year. That's billion with a B. That is this many zeros. Similarly, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, otherwise known as IDEA, came into law in 1975 with the intent to provide all public schools with critically important funding to support programs for students with special needs. But wait, that's not all. Far from it, actually. The Department of Education does not just support education in the United States at the K-12 level, it supports education at the post-secondary level as well. If you've ever had to apply for financial aid in order to attend college or a trade school, chances are you had to fill out the FAFSA, which right in its name is the free application for federal student aid. And more than 17 million current and aspiring students submit the FAFSA every single year in order to qualify for student loans, grants, and more. And that includes $33 billion, again, that's billion with a B, which is this many zeros, in Pell Grants for lower and middle income families. And on top of that, the Department of Education manages the Office of Federal Student Aid, which manages approximately $1.6 trillion. That's trillion with a T, which is this many zeros in student loan debt. And we all know the student debt crisis is a very serious issue in this country. So all of this only scratches the surface of what the U.S. Department of Education actually does. There's so much more beyond that, including the enforcement of key civil rights legislation. All of that alone, even just the budgetary part of it, significantly impacts the lives of practically everyone in this country in one way or another. And yes, we can absolutely talk about what the federal government could be doing to increase support in all of these areas in meaningful and impactful ways, but it should be obvious that cutting the workforce in half or worse that is directly responsible for managing all of these areas sure isn't going to solve anyone's problems. And unfortunately, it is no exaggeration that this could very well be the very first step towards shutting down the Department of Education completely. Closing a federal agency officially is supposed to require an act of Congress, but as we've seen unfold in the past 6 weeks or so, the current administration hasn't exactly been playing by the rules when it comes to how federal agencies are supposed to be managed. So what are we supposed to do about all this? Well, one action you could take right now is to call your representatives and senators in Congress to demand that they take action to protect the Department of Education. And I highly recommend using the 5 Calls app for this purpose. If you pop in your zip code, we'll provide you with all the contact information you need to reach your elected representatives. And if you're not sure exactly what to say over the phone, the 5 Calls app does a wonderful job with providing you with a template that you can customize to help you begin to organize your thoughts for what you want to say in your message. Believe me, I am right there with you with anybody out there who feels super skeptical about the idea that calling your elected officials ever actually does anything in this country. But then again, that's exactly what certain politicians out there want you to think. And we are starting to actually see some kind of pushback. It is small, but it's there with what has already happened with other federal agencies that have been in jeopardy during this time. So it is worth it to take 5 whole minutes out of your day to make these phone calls and take this civic action. Calling your representatives and senators allegedly has a greater impact than emailing them or signing any sort of online petitions that you might see floating around. But if you have time to do all of those actions, then by all means do as much as you can. But I would recommend prioritizing the phone calls. And to be absolutely clear, I, for one, strongly believe that we need to do way more than, in addition to calling and emailing or attending town halls where they come to visit the communities that they're supposed to be looking out for and trying to improve and advocate for. But I frankly don't know what other actions there are at the moment, so we can at least start there. And to close out on a personal note, if you've ever watched my educational show Engage right here at youtube.com/Engage Show, you'll know that this is not at all the kind of video that I want to be spending my time making. I created this show to help make the innovative practice of leveraging games of all formats for learning more accessible to educators everywhere, and our society desperately needs innovation in the education space that actually meets the needs of students where they are, while also giving teachers the support they need to be able to do their jobs. But let me tell you, I fully recognize that the quality of life at most schools in the United States for both teachers and students has been a far cry from where it should be in this country. And it is obviously challenging, to say the least, to be here pushing for supporting innovative practices like game-based learning at a time when teachers are just absolutely stretched to the limit, having to take on more and more and more responsibilities while not being provided with the time they need, the support they need, or even in far too many places in this country with at least a living wage. And I won't pretend for a second that the quality of life for most teachers and students in the United States was super terrific at the time when I started making this show either. There are so many, countless systemic issues that were only exacerbated and worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic that still have not been addressed with any sort of real serious action to the benefit of teachers and students. But all I could tell you is that if the Department of Education is severely weakened or just outright dismantled completely, things are only going to get worse than they already are for teachers, for students, and by extension for parents and for your local community as a whole. So thank you so much for taking the time to call your representatives and senators in Congress to demand that they take action immediately to protect the Department of Education. A link to the template script that 5 Calls provides can be found right here in the description below. So thank you again for watching, for supporting Engage, and for taking the time to call your representatives and senators to demand that they protect the Department of Education. Thank you.